Welcome to another interview in the D91 Hybrid Pioneer series. It is a pleasure to have with us today Dave Cheung, who is the Vice President of Education and the Vice President of Public Relations at Brighton and Hove Speakers. Since 2020, he has held those two roles. He started his journey with Toastmasters just over 10 years ago, over in Hong Kong, where he went on to run a corporate club at a bank for several years. He was a founding member of Toastmasters Hong Kong. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you very much, Mo. Thanks for having me.
Okay. We shall get on by asking the first question. How did you go about the process of embarking on hybrid meetings and why?
Looking back, this began during the beginning of 2021, around the time when the vaccines were being rolled out. There was an extra bit of optimism within our crowd, and we just started thinking about the transition back from the online meetings where we've been all year on to the in-person meetings. And the reasoning behind that is that we were getting increasing amount of inquiries from people wanting to practice public speaking, but in person. So rather than kind of jump straight into it, we as a committee came together and just kind of decided that the next course of action was to just feel the pulse for our members, because the way we saw it with the members that we had, the decision was a joint decision, not only ourselves in the committee, but towards the members that we serve at the time. And so we decided to throw out an anonymous vote, shall we say. Basically, we just gave them 4 choices to do on their decision on how do you want to proceed for the following year. And this was thrown out to about 20 members at the time that we had. And the way we came back, it was a mix of people who abstained and didn't really mind either way which it went, to people who suggested hybrid. There's 1 or 2 people who wanted to stay online only. But I think it was overwhelmingly clear from the data is that we had to go back in person in some form. And so it was then decided that we were going to go into a hybrid form. And we then took the next step of scouting out a venue. And because the old venue that we used to have was under reconstruction. And so we found something a little bit more modern, a hotel in the center of Brighton by the train station. And we couldn't have wished for a better venue, to be honest with you, because when we stepped foot in that venue in that day, we were kind of shown around at various meeting and function rooms. We kind of were very, not so much apprehensive, but we were trying to feel out how many people we can get into that room and check out the facilities. But I, as a technical person, didn't really go in there and just look for the aesthetics. I went in there, connected to the internet in that room. First thing I did was the speed test. A speed test to establish whether it was feasible to go and online at the same time as being on in person, because I knew that would be the first failure point. If we didn't have a good internet connection, then a hybrid meeting was essentially a no-go at that particular venue. But like I say, that venue was much better than we anticipated, because they had a Wi-Fi connection that was so much faster than what we all had at home. So we snapped up that venue at a breath. So when we came down to the venue, we were also gifted with a projector. That was one less problem to worry about, but there was no sound system. And so the next stage of that was to really just go through the whole process of doing a feasibility.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Essentially, this was the hybrid journey you traveled was based on consulting your members, what it is your members wanted, and a bit of good fortune along the way, finding an excellent venue with great internet, much faster than most people do have. Okay, that's interesting. Was the first hybrid meeting easier or more difficult than you thought, and why?
It was more difficult in the way that we didn't have the equipment at the time. I quite literally had to use the computer I'm using right now, haul it down a hill, grab some assorted cables, thinking of a way to try and connect it all up. I just basically scrounged as many phones and wires I could and just tried to build a solution by being in one of the rooms on that day. So the idea was that I would get one other person in the committee to dial in to the Zoom call. I kick off the Zoom call in the meeting room, and I just basically test all the connections, making sure that it's all connected to the mic, to the projector, that I can see my other member on the projection screen, and also to hear if I can hear them well enough, particularly in the back of the room, to see if everything was going to be working fine. And after a couple of goes, I think there was one kind of misfire, shall we say. I've forgotten a certain cable to take down to the hotel. It was a good 20-minute walk to go down there. That I had to do a return visit to get that first tried out. So in the end, it did. Once we established that connectivity and everything that we had, we then just thought, okay, we're going to pilot this in our kind of next meeting, and we were just going to take it essentially one step at a time before really committing to it.
Okay, so essentially what you were describing is the fact that you trialed it first with you going to the venue, one member logging in. So what was the first actual meeting with your members? What was that like?
That was quite a fumble because I was still under the controls, and I had my computer. I need to wear glasses, so I couldn't really see the projection screen. It was at an oblique angle. I couldn't handle the controls very well, and it was a balance of trying to manage the Zoom meeting as well as being floor manager to the people in real life there. And it was a little bit chaotic for us at that particular time, but I think we still pulled off a meeting that held together.
Okay, that's really good, because you did a trial run with yourself at the venue and somebody logging in, and you were able to resolve some of the issues. But then on the day, it was still a little bit of a challenge, which is the same experience as lots of people have had. Considering the journey so far, what, in your view, are the critical essentials to guarantee successful Toastmasters hybrid meetings?
I'm taking this as the essentials technically of a successful meeting, or are we talking? Okay.
As a technical person, let's talk about the technical things.
Right. Okay. I mean, amongst which we were thinking that because a lot of people are still going to be at home, and there's some people who dared to go in person, that we're going to be faced with that kind of balance, and we didn't want to exclude one or the other when we go in person. And so we kind of pitched it as an inclusive step to ensure that the people online are able and have the opportunity to do some speaking, as well as people who definitely want to be there in real life. So one of the kind of challenges that we had to make sure of is that we have cameras set up in a room, one pointing to the audience and one pointing to the speaker, is that we had to make sure that the speaker was looking at the camera. And that was one, because we wanted to make sure that people felt included. In terms of the other technical steps, I mean, there was the rituals of making sure that the equipment that we bought in the end was tried and tested with feedback, especially people online. We changed our rituals in a certain way, because we don't always get the same room when we're going to these meetings. So I had to admit this. I actually sat down and drew the room layouts to basically draw where the computer's going to sit, where the speaker's going to go, where the microphones. Basically, I did a whole room layout, like some home decoration renovation project, just to ensure that we got some kind of optimum layouts for speakers to be able to walk around enough and still be seen and heard as well. And I'm also, amongst that, we also had the rituals of having a sound check as well. But I think what made it successful is the fact that we were able to make it consistent and repeatable through the fact that it's already been tried and tested. And we always check with our people online to see, can you see us? Can you hear us? How is it for you? And we were quite surprised just how well the feedback came back to us, saying that the video quality was good. And this is quite surprising that this came from an old Samsung 7 that we have just mounted on a tripod, for instance. So that was a pleasant surprise.
Okay, that's interesting. The challenge of not actually having the same room for every meeting is an interesting one. So you needed to put together like a schematic plan of the venue for members who are supporting with the setup. And I suppose the key thing is, despite the fact that you use different rooms, you've been able to achieve a degree of consistency, and you're surprised as to how well and how good the quality of the video is using a Samsung camera. So that's good.
Mm.
The next question is, what is a positive that hybrid meetings have provided that neither online or in person could have?
That is quite a tough question, because I think they all both have their merits. Though I think I mentioned earlier, there was that inclusion aspect, which neither would address in its entirety. So the inclusion aspect is where we provide better support for people in different situations, and pretty much what COVID did was accelerate our changing needs on there. People will be based at home, people based in person, and it gave us that opportunity to be more flexible, in that regular members can choose whether to come online or to be in person. We've had people who have experienced both sides of the mirror, and it is basically based on their circumstances at that time. Some people may be very too busy to be able to attend the meeting, so they just attend online. Some people have to be isolated, that kind of force them to be online, whereas at the same time on another meeting they will just come into the meeting and experience it what it's like in person. So in a way, it's very much more inclusive in a way that you are able to support both of those modes of kind of your life, as it were, at the time.
Okay. Flexibility and choice is the way I would take that. And that's a powerful thing to be able to offer to your members. Flexibility and choice. Okay. An interesting question now. Based on all the meetings you've had, and I'm sure you're going to have many more, what is your best hybrid meeting experience so far? Did you have a special event? Was it a Christmas? Was it a contest? What, in your view, is your best hybrid meeting experience so far?
One thing that stuck out of me at one of our hybrid meetings was how one of our members decided almost mysteriously to decide to deliver their speech online. Usually they'll come in person, but on this occasion they opted to go purely online. I thought, oh, okay, what's the matter of him? Is he too busy? But it turns out he had a speech to do that night, and there was a speech about kind of dragons and kind of the philosophy of a story when he was a child. And I was there at the time. I think I was either Toastmaster or Toastmaster for the evening at the time, and he played a magic trick on me. A magic trick, so everybody could see this person deal cards out on the screen of the projector, and he was interacting with me, asking me to think of a card, and he basically motioned the various questions to hone in on my answer, and I was completely floored when he actually guessed my card as well. And there was no Darren Brown, no trickery pokery, but yet there was some smoke and mirrors, I'm sure, involved in the act of being online. But it definitely impressed both the people as an online person, the people on the floor at the time. So it completely floored me on that particular evening.
Okay, that's interesting. A story about dragons and a magical experience. Okay, thank you very much for that. It's something you touched on a little bit earlier. As a technical person, and obviously you went to certain venues and you had certain things as part of the package, but you did need to buy some things. How did your club select the equipment and decide on the setup?
The approach was to try and be as cost effective as possible. We didn't want to use the club's money inappropriately, and I also knew I couldn't just hold my my computer to the venue constantly. So we kind of specced out and the idea of having a laptop. We didn't already have a laptop going. We had an ancient iPad in the club, but it's been a long time since we invested in any new technology. So I proposed a laptop that was not entry level, but it was still budget enough to be able to run Zoom very well. It needed to do that in a way that it needed to be able to support the green screen backgrounds, but it was obviously we had to do some research in that area to make sure that the Windows laptop was able to cope with that. So that was the biggest chunk of investment that we had. So I remember just going down to Curry's with a shopping list of specs after we figured it out, and we settled upon this HP laptop in the end. And so that was a big investment. The next investment was a portable speaker, because the room didn't have any sound systems per se. So we just went in and bought a Bluetooth speaker that runs on batteries, that has enough power to be able to deliver the voice to the back of the room. So it was quite a diddly little thing. I mean, I'm just giving you the shape of it now. It's really just that small, but it can power out the sound of the speakers online to everyone in the room, so long as that they don't talk over each other. So I think that was a sound idea as well. And another idea too was the idea of being able to make sure we had a dedicated microphone for the speakers so that people can hear at home. And that idea came from that year of home working, that ultimately the webcam microphone wasn't going to cut it. So we had to get a a microphone that's dedicated that you can plug in. In terms of the other cameras, that was quite interesting in that because we had all that internet bandwidth, the idea was we were going to structure it in the way that people would bring in their own phones for the day, connect it to the Zoom, and basically just point it somewhere, and there'll be participants of the Zoom meeting. So there's no wires involved. It was just a case of being able to use those phones to be able to act as our eyes for the people online. And I brought out a couple, maybe a few old phones from gathering dust in the corner, and just kind of connected those up, and it worked splendidly after that. So there was no extra expense occurred to the cameras for that. So all in all, I think if you're going to price it all up amongst all the wires that we bought, you need really long wires, by the way, extensions. I mean, it came in at around under £650 for all that.
That's interesting. 650. I would be interested in finding out a bit more about how many phones you use, and I suppose that's an invitation to visit Brighton and find out how you run your setups. So that's interesting. You bought a laptop and a Bluetooth mic, some existing phones. Did you mention something about a mic? I don't know. Did you buy a mic, or you just used the one that one of your members already had?
Well, we just bought a new dedicated one for the club. So
Okay.
that came £30 or something like that.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Now, next question, which I think a lot of people are usually interested in terms of doing something within Toastmasters, is what transferable skills do you think our members can develop running hybrid meetings?
If I can just describe what you see is the fact you'll probably see me in a corner in a meeting in front of a laptop, coordinating the display on the projector, and also to be able to field the chat coming through from our online members. So whenever a speaker online wants to speak, we make sure that the projector is pinned to that speaker so everybody can see. So the way I would say all of this is that it's all online and in-person stage management. There is a lot of practicalities to just make sure that you look after the people who you're going to be seeing the online meeting from home. And we just wanted to make sure that they are getting a fair view of what's actually going on in the stage. This is why we got a camera facing the audience, a camera facing the speaker, and even a separate camera for the timer as well. So it's basically, the way I approached it is thinking like those old DVDs with different multiple views, which were quite rare. And we wanted to kind of make sure that the person who joined online was as immersed as we could do in the Zoom meeting based on the different views that are there. So that was one problem to sort out. The other one is you also have to stay sharp. Is be able to be responsive and staying sharp to those needs of the people online. And I think finally, it's the process I described in the previous questions, also about the ability to solve problems and trying things new. And that's something I could, that I've definitely got out of being able to set up all of this gear and solve the problem of how do we get online people feel immersed and included in our meetings.
Okay.
But when it all works, it's so good. It's really satisfying.
That would mean that at some point in time, some of your members may even consider taking on a role as an online in stage management, whether it's online or in person. That's something that somebody that is a member of your club could do after a few. I don't know how regularly you rotate the roles within your club, but with enough practice, it's an opportunity for somebody to do something else. Interesting. One of the things that tends to happen in clubs is before the online, getting there early, set up, pack up. In terms of hybrid meetings specifically, are there extra demands put on committee and in-person attendees? I know we've touched on different camera views. Well, are there particular extra demands put on the committee and in-person attendees?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, with all the equipment, I mean, as a committee member, it's the additional time and effort to essentially go there early, rig everything up, test it before the meeting starts, and then tearing everything down afterwards. So there was the element of extra time needed before and after compared to just the pure in-person days. For the in-person attendees, generally there aren't any extra demands, but I think we do, and I touched on this earlier, is that they just need to be extra cognizant of the online audience. So we ask them occasionally, especially or in the briefings, to make sure that they do look at the camera to address the people at home. So and also there are limitations to our cameras as well. So we try to define a stage area where they can kind of pace around and walk around to stay within the camera. And of course, and there's other issues and problems that we solved as well, like the projector blinding people's eyes and making sure that the seating arrangements are pivoted in a way that faces the speaker at the right time as well. So it's all this extra thought that's gone into to try and make the experience a lot more comfortable for both people that's there and also at home.
Thank you very much. Arriving early, more equipment to set up, and then more equipment to take away at the end. So more time and effort. So there are few challenges that clubs that are thinking of doing this, it requires a little bit more effort than a normal face-to-face meeting. Thank you very much. How long have you been running hybrid meetings at your club? And what do you see as the challenges going forward?
Well, we started doing it in September 2021, just a late summer. And looking back, apart from what I mentioned about kind of rigging up and tearing down, this is all extra time that's needed. And I think there is it can become a strain on resources if it's just one person being able to, with the knowledge and ability to do that. So we are looking at trying to ensure that we can make this a little bit more sustainable and getting more people involved in the setup beforehand as well. So, and also we need that contingency in case the key people are not around as well. So those are the kind of challenges, just to make sure there's that expertise that's properly spread through the club members to be able to just set them up themselves.
Thank you. And our final question really is, on a positive note, what is the best possible outlook you would predict or expect with Toastmasters hybrid meetings this year?
Depends on which way you look at this. I mean, as much as we have been inclusive, it doesn't change the predicament that the last 2 years has put us in that people are forced to kind of stay indoors or at home And it is my hope that one day that they can all come out and play again, and we'll probably see the back of that and return to the old normal. But we are living in a new normal now, and for that, it will be nice to be able to see a healthy balance of people online and also in person, to be able to interact with each other as transparently as you would if everybody was in the same room together. And that's, as long as that need is there, the club will be able to respond and be there for them as well.
Thank you very much. And on that note, I have to say, thank you very much for coming along to the Hybrid Pioneer series and this interview. One question I would ask is, if somebody wants to visit your club, when do you meet and how do they find you?
All right. We have meetings twice a month on the second and fourth Wednesday of each month from 7 o'clock to about 9 o'clock. If you want to find more about our club, just look online for Brighton and Hove Speakers. And that will lead you to our website. We also have a presence on Twitter, as well as Instagram and all the usual social media channels as well.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Dave. And please go on to the D91 YouTube channel. There are a series of interviews with hybrid pioneers. If you're considering running a hybrid meeting, lots of ideas to capture. They're there for you to enjoy. And if you need support or you have any questions, please reach out to any of those people who are interviewed or the District 91 Hybrid Committee. Thank you very much. And until we see you again, enjoy yourself.
Thank you, Mo.